60% of my
And they
shots.
have people.
That's a win.
You're not extra people.
Yeah, I go for
You're a sales guy, you must play typical.
one drive, one shift.
I think that like if you walk away with like
Your son did well.
He did. That was good. Yeah, he's been going.
I have a grade for myself in my paper.
like when we go to the
So much better.
that would be my walk away.
So like the program was like basically you couldn't do worse than par, like if you were open on par, you just stopped.
Well, when I first my husband, I see often where his best shot lands.
When I had to see some of them, yeah.
I'll take one eye. Yeah, it's honestly.
That's the game.
It is 7:02. Let's call the Thursday, May 7th, 2026 Wilton Board of Education regular meeting to order. Has everybody had a chance to look at the agenda? Yes. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Pam. I'll take Pat as a second. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Comments from the public. The board has set aside time at the beginning and end of regular meetings for public comments for members of the public to share their views on matters involving the Wilton Public Schools and to help inform the board's decisions on such matters. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 15 minutes to any one subject. For the record, please also give your name and address. The board considers the views of citizens in its deliberations and welcomes and appreciates public comment. The board listens to public comment thoughtfully and with interest. The board, however, generally does not respond to public comment during board meetings by offering commentary or answering questions. The board also invites commentators and the public to contact the board or the superintendent directly with any specific questions or comments. Are there any comments from the public? Seeing none, thank you. Consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda has the minutes from the executive session on April 23rd, minutes from the Policy and Communications meeting on April 23rd, our regular meeting minutes from April 23rd, and then there's several policies, Policy 1112, News Media Relationships, Policy 2140, Superintendent of Schools, Policy 3232, Individuals with a Disability Act Fiscal Compliance, Policy 3516.5, Sexual Offenders on School Property, Policy 4115.3, Evaluation, Termination, and Non-Renewal of Athletic Coaches, and Policy 4111, Recruitment, Selection, and Appointment of Certified and Non-Certified Staff. All these policies came before the table and were noted that the only changes were of technical nature, corrections, typos, capitalization, etc. So they are on tonight's consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Lori.
Second.
Second, thank you, Nicola. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Board Chair report. I would just like to thank everybody who tuned in or came out on Tuesday night for Wilton's annual town meeting. The budget is on the ballot along with 9 bonding proposals. And we ask, please, if you did not come to the meeting and didn't vote right after the meeting, adjourned voting is taking place at the Clune Center this Saturday. Please come over and vote for the budget, vote for the 4 bonding proposals that were approved by this board for our school infrastructure continuing improvement program. And thank you all for your support. I would just also like to take a minute to give a little shout out to the Miller Driscoll PTA Carnival folks. You had a very successful weekend. I know that you can't control the weather, but you also had really great weather, which hasn't been the case the last couple of years. So I just want to say, well done. I know my kids had a fabulous time, and they span the ages of attendance and heard lovely things throughout town. So thank you very much.
Great, I'm just gonna flag 2 upcoming events for you. Tomorrow night, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Wilton Library is the annual FAPA Art and Music Show. If you've been to it, then you know it's a must-attend event. We have an opportunity to showcase our students pre-K through grade 12. So the library is decked out in all the artwork in the past, and I expect it will be tomorrow. There will be demonstration stations, and then our musicians will engage in a series of performances across the night. So it's a beautiful night, and please take a minute and stop in. Next week, I was curious last night if you folks on the far side of the stage could hear the band practicing in the band room. Pam said you couldn't hear anything. I heard a whisper of it at one point, so it must have been the acoustical design of the auditorium. But next week, The Little Mermaid debuts Friday night at 7 o'clock. Tickets are available online. You can also see the show Saturday the 16th at 1 and 7, and then Sunday at 1 o'clock. And so, like our previous performances, I am sure this time is going to blow the doors off the place. And so, if you have time, please go see it. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it's like we're all talking about end of the year stuff. So it's May, so everybody get ready. I just, do 5 things in one night.
Yep.
First up for review and discuss special education report, Wilton goals and priorities 3 through 12. Great.
So I'm gonna invite Nicole Corse and Sharon D'Angelo up to join me. We'll take these 3 seats over here.
Thank you.
Bring our work to life. Come on up. Thanks. I thought I forgot my notes. And I'm gonna miss anything. All right, well, thanks for having us. We're excited tonight to bring our work to life for you. So I think before we start, we want to give a big thank you to all of our special education teachers, paraprofessionals, school psychologists, social workers, speech pathologists, and counselors who make it all possible under the leadership of Nicole and Sharon. And then we have a remarkable IL team. So we have Sarah Marcus, who's currently on maternity leave. So Rebecca Westwood is in for her at Miller Driscoll. Katie Miller at Cider Mill, Holly Metz at Middlebrook, Julie Lawrence at the high school, and then Denise Hernakis out in Community Steps. So without all of that amazing team, none of this would work. So we'll go to the next slide, which really talks about the goals that we set for this year. So I'm sure you've heard us all talk this year about accessing grade level content. So when we looked at that, we really looked at it in 2 lenses this year. One was our implementation of support services, and then looking at our MTSS model. So when we look at evaluating our support services, we really, K-5, looked at our push in, pull out model and where we were taking students from, where we were pushing in to ensure that they had the most access to grade level content. And at our middle school level, we really looked at our push in model by team and then our skill blocks. So students get support services at middle school cross team based on the area of need. And then the high school, we really looked at our co-taught classes, our academic lab, and then you heard me talk during budget season about expanding our DBT program, K-12, and what that looks like. And then we really looked at what our attendance and crisis intervention looks like. So when we think about that, that's home visits for students that are having a hard time. That's care coordination. So when a student is hospitalized and then put in what's called the PHP, we did say next year we're going to make you an acronym cheat sheet. So I apologize.
I started it,
And then we were like, oh, we should have put it all together. So if it gets, just feel free to stop me. So we have students who are hospitalized and then put in partial hospitalizations where our mental health team will work with both the hospital, the step down program, outside therapist, and family to do care coordination, which really takes a lot of time and effort amongst our staff, all with the plan of bringing students back to school after that crisis. So those, and then our community partnerships. So we have a lot of community partnerships with different organizations in town and have really strived this year to build more connections for our families that have students with disabilities. It can be a really isolating experience. So we've created community connection meetings where we have parents from every building that come together. We've created a resource list for parents of like, where's a good dentist to go to in town? Where do you get a haircut if your child's having a hard time? And then we had some larger events. We had the fashion show, which all of you attended. We had our Especially Everyone concert. So looking to expand that to try to have one per quarter for next year. And then we looked at our MTSS model. We're in full implementation 612. and then looking to expand that down to our elementary schools for next year. So those are our goals for this year, which then leads us into the broad spectrum of students that we service. So we have a wide range of neurodivergent learners. You'll see that we've had an increase over the years in our students with autism and OHI label. And these are numbers, right? So trying to bring these numbers to life for you, I think is important. So we have students who really perform above benchmark on standardized tests, do really well from a cognitive standpoint, and the school day can really be hard. They might miss social nuances, they might miss social cues, kind of the hidden curriculum, I call it, of school can be really challenging for them. So those are students that will work in small group to skill them up from a social emotional perspective and social skills, social thinking. Then we have students with really complex cognitive needs, might be intellectually disabled, who we really believe need to have access to grade level content as well. So we work really hard to scaffold and modify that curriculum when appropriate. And then we have students at all ages dealing with some emotional dysregulation who really require that acquisition of skill, and then how do we generalize it out into their classroom to make sure that they're not learning skills in isolation. And then we have students with specific learning disabilities, attention deficit, all that kind of goes in between. But this just gives you a little bit of a landscape of what some of those numbers look like. So next you'll hear, so based on this, you can go to the next one, Lucille. So in order to have access to grade level content, you need to have time with your non-identified peers. So we are proud to say that, you can read the numbers, but majority of our students spend more than 69% of their day with their non-identified peers. And because of the really, I think, broad continuum of service we offer, less than 3% of our students are outplaced. So our next slide, you've heard us talk for a long time about our achievement gap, which is still very much an area of focus for us and growth. This slide really breaks down the last 3 years across our DIRG in terms of where that achievement gap percentage lives. So you can read it, we have work to do, and we're moving a little bit in the right direction. I'm gonna talk more tonight about what our plans are to address that. On the next slide, I broke it down a little bit more for you based on students with disabilities and without disabilities in terms of what that gap is. And again, that's over 3 years and comparison data with other schools in our DIRG. And then the next 3 slides is by ELA Math and Science for our MAP test. So that really looks at the point differential based on the RIT score, which is a scale score. So that really looks to track student growth over time. And really, this data is meaningful in the sense that our students who were significantly below benchmarks, or students that kind of fall in what we call the red, and then students that are approaching benchmark in the yellow, those students are making more growth, which is what we want to see, and is really an area of a focus going into next year of really looking at the conditional growth percentile for students, because that measures students against themselves, and seeing more than 50% to see a year's growth in a year's time. So that just breaks that down again over the last 4 years and the DIRG comparison data. And then we had a tri-state visit this year. So I broke the last 3 slides into what our essential questions were. Not gonna read them because you can all do that. But the key takeaways that we really learned from our visit, which was a meaningful experience, was defining what some of our key terms are, and making sure that we all have shared expectation on what those terms are, really formalizing our MTSS process, looking and securing common planning time between our special education and general education teachers, looking at data points outside the map, but making sure that there's a scope and sequence behind that, and then really aligning our professional development to our goals going into next year in alignment with our general ed partners. So this just talks a little bit more in detail, but those were really the big takeaways for the next 3 slides. All right, so I'm gonna have Sharon and Nicole talk a little bit about some glowing moments from the buildings and teams that they work with. So Sharon will start us off.
Been a very busy year, so it was really good to stop and reflect.
we hit the ground running. We have a very full preschool, as you guys know. Our enrollment remains high there. We already have our wait list and everything for next year, which we talk about every year. It's we have a coveted 6 classrooms down there, and so much growth in our ability to integrate the pre-reading skills and all of our curriculum and bringing it down to the pre-K4 and really kind of bringing our teachers down there, bringing those teachers up to see, you know, what the difference is between pre-K4 and kindergarten. So a lot of great work down there. We also had a lot of new staff this year. So we had I think new staff brings you the opportunity to reassess what you need to revisit. So some of those just foundational skills and strategies, and really integrate that professional learning back. So it's a good opportunity to be like, okay, let's revisit some of our professional learning for learning disability, dyslexia, autism, things like that. We have a lot of work to do with making sure that we are getting all of the newest assessments that are out there. So we had vetted and ordered and started using a couple of really comprehensive evaluations at the K2 and 3-5 level for really digging into the dyslexia piece and identifying earlier and identifying more specifically where the areas of weakness are. So that's been really helpful in all of our PPTs and things like that, and parents are really appreciative of it. Along with that, the new curriculum has really been a very good partner to what we do in special education. The teachers are attending the regular ed professional learning, both at Miller Driscoll and Cider Mill, and unpacking that curriculum, making sure that all of the most important benchmarks are being met at a much earlier age, and then working together with Dr. Chuck Smith's help and getting all the interventionists together, really just making sure it's a all hands on deck approach. So we've been doing a lot of that work at Miller Driscoll, and this year, in addition to everything else, we and I'm not sure if you guys have already talked about this a little bit, Melissa, but the DBT elementary curriculum was finally released. The training was finally made public. We, with Melissa's help, we were able to get teams together, and we were able to begin our first actual continuum of service at the K2 level for 5 or 6 of our students that really required those intensive skills to be delivered on a daily basis throughout the day and with a very consistent team. So we attended the training together. Kathy, with her masterful scheduling and her support and her help with all of this, and also because of the fact that Miller Driscoll is very nicely organized into teams, we were able to really focus in on certain group of students and a certain group of teachers to get this underway. We have significantly decreased the level of dysregulation, restraints and seclusions, things like that. We have some great data that we can, certainly put together over the summer, and that is probably one of the, I think, hardest things that we did this year that have had the quickest sort of turnaround. But I also think that really quickly I want to mention the new curriculum at K2 talks, there's a whole unit on students with disabilities. So the whole second grade got the opportunity to really dive into this curriculum, and is it 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 6 weeks-ish. And so we, Melissa, myself, we partnered with the coaches in how to unpack some of this for our youngest learners, how to make it meaningful for them, and how to, help them process some of it. This culminated with a very organized hour and a half of some middle school and high school students with disabilities coming down into Miller Driscoll and speaking to our second grade classes in paired groups. It was absolutely amazing. It was phenomenal. The kids were so happy to be there and to talk about what their disability journey has been and how it's affected them and where the pitfalls were. Our second grade students obviously got a lot out of the curriculum because their questions were amazing and on point and just so mature, and we had a lot of laughs, and we also learned a lot, and I loved that. And Melissa organized a lot of that with Gina Dignon, who's one of our coaches at Miller Driscoll. So that's a huge glow. And then Cider Mill, we've done a lot of, I'm going to steal this. Okay, okay, thank you. We did, we continued the new assessments at Cider Mill as well. We've absolutely loved having Janine there. You guys know all of the great structural organizational pieces that come out of Miller Driscoll, and Janine has done such a good job in such a quick amount of time with bringing that into grades 3 through 5 and making a really nice bridge for our students with disabilities to transition into grade 3 and just getting those structures set there. We did the training for the elementary DBT with them as well. We do have 2 very successful groups of DBT running at the grade 3-5 level. We're going to continue to refine that. And also, I think our biggest movement at Cider Mill is working with Chuck to get all of our support services together, make sure that the schedule allows for that collaborative time so that we can continue to work together with regular ed and make sure that our students with disabilities have the same experiences and that the time is really well spent. And we have some great plans coming up from that, but I think that the work we did this year is so important because it's messy, and you know we leave meetings not happy sometimes, but that's what has to happen today, and then we will have some great outcomes with that moving forward. So those are my highlights.
Yeah. Thank you. And then at Middlebrook, as you know, we're very proud of the team structure, and I think part of what we've tried to do this year as we look at supports across different disciplines is to break down what those teams look like a little bit and share kids across interventionists, special education teachers. We started that work in a very small way this year and want to scale it up next year. We've had some really great data in sharing the supports and sharing the expertise of people. And part of that starts with our MTSS model. So we revamped SRBI, have a very strong model, thanks to Catherine also, who runs those meetings, and bringing really everyone into the room to talk about how to support kids as they move in or out of special services. So we want to take a child where they are, regardless where they are on the continuum of support. And part of that too was blurring the lines of co-taught. Co-taught helped created classes that were highly packed with kids with identified needs. So we created a push-in model across all the classes, and that has been very complex in a middle school and also very successful so far this year. We have some tweaking to do to increase some of the data collection, but I think it's something that all of our staff has worked really hard on, and it's been pretty successful. We continued our executive functioning work that was targeted within small groups in special ed, and then weekly groups with the counselors, and then Polly Metz, our instructional leader, really led a committee of people to embed the skills across grade levels and identified 3 to 4 skills per grade level that we pushed out to the general ed teachers. So it took the onus off special ed and embedded it into the curriculum. And that was also grounded in Chris Bogart's work. And then something that we are very proud of is including some of our kids with the most complex needs even more into the general ed curriculum, and even some of our stride classes that were a little bit harder to access, including a PE class, which we've really done some great work bringing in role models into that PE class to help kids access in the best way they can the PE curriculum. And it's been a wonderful experience for the peers and for the kids with the highest needs. And I welcome you to come see that class at any time if you need a little bit of joy in your day. And then we continued that work up into the high school this year. As you know, I'm new to the high school. Thank you for welcoming me, Brian and Bob. So we started with Ms. Bogart also embedding some of the work for executive functioning. We did whole school training. We got input from all of the different departments at the high school to identify where we think the skills are lagging there. And then we started to identify the skills that going from 7, 8, 9 10, 11. So we're going to continue that work next year and build the vocabulary and where that will look in each department. So that's still continuing. It'll begin coming up again in the summer. But I want to thank our special ed teachers and some of the instructional leaders at the high school for that support as well. And then we did a lot of great work with the coaches at the high school, looking at the achievement gap data specifically, and identifying where we can look at the strands of weaknesses and then how we can embed that into services that were already in place, and then really looking ahead to next year and reimagining what those services can look like. So we've had some really great collaborative conversations with the interventionists, Chuck, and the special ed department. So I'm proud of that collaboration so far. And then the pretty visuals are of the post-secondary options for our students with special needs. So of 52 students, 34 are, and some of these numbers are fluid, that's why there's two visuals. 34 are attending four-year colleges, and some of them are represented there. 3 are going to community colleges, 2 are going to trade schools. About 13 are unsure, still not committed yet. And then 6 students are staying in our community and going to community steps. So some moment of pride for sure. And that's
And then our last slide is really around our goals for next year. So still continuing our goal of accessing grade level content, but really taking some of the feedback from Tri-State and the expansion of our continuum of service, which I thank you because some of that was budgetary around our BCBA and OG specialist, to really look at the different domains in our service. So we've talked a lot about DBT, so just really looking at fine-tuning that to have assured experiences between grades and skill sets by grades, similar to how Nicole spoke around the executive functioning. So we have a team that's doing some summer work this summer to roll that out. So we have a scope and sequence by grade around that curriculum. The integrated supports is a lot of what you heard Nicole and Sharon talk about, of really looking at flexible groupings regardless of a student's identification label and how we share supports across our special education teachers and interventionists, which Chuck and the coaching staff have been a huge part of. Building thinking classrooms is something that we're really leaning into with all of our teachers, and making sure our special education teachers are a part of that. Is really important to us. And then you heard us talk a little bit tonight about our MTSS model. So really looking at expanding that, which really targets tiered interventions for students prior to being identified, and really tracking that, not just around the referral of intervention, but once they're in intervention, how are they doing? What does it look like? When do we need to change things? And how that plays into both academic growth and social emotional well-being.
And we'll have an acronym sheet for you next year.
Yes, we promise. Try not to lean in on them tonight. So, any questions?
So the
Not a lot.
DBT,
Yeah.
so at the workshop, you told me to go look at the videos, and I did. And so I'm
I
curious,
didn't tell you, I just suggested.
but I did what you said. So just describe to me how you do that, how that looks, what that looks like, how it's structured. Because it was fascinating to me to look at the videos, and I could tell that they would be pretty effective for kids.
Absolutely, and they're high level skills brought down to
Yes.
A 5-year-old's level. So for our students that require that level of service, we have their schedule set. So and this is also fluid and flexible, but they may come in right off the bus and come right into Maria Streeman's room, where they would sit and do some of that, the mindfulness, watch one of those videos, talk about one of the skills, how does it relate. Now, that even just getting them to do that probably
was
took
huge.
a month, right? So it's a very slow process, because you have to, at that age, get them to understand that this is going to help them and not further dysregulate them, whereas a slightly older child might be like, okay.
Which the bus might have already done.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Correct, and Kathy knows that, because we spend endless hours talking about bus stuff. So that is like that middle of the day, we will do another check-in, and then there's always an end-of-day check-in where we review those skills that day.
Same kids.
Same kids. It's a cohort of students right now that's 4. However, once we, and again, I don't want to, jinx anything, but like we really significantly decreased the level of dysregulation, and you could almost just instantly see the anxiety in some of these students drop because they knew they had this structure in place and they knew who their people were, and they felt like, okay, like I can do this because I know I can have a bad day and I have this at my disposal, and I have these people that understand me and get me. It takes a long time, but those videos are sort of integrated into, I think she uses 1 a week, and then if they can't get that skill, she'll stay on that, so it definitely takes a while for them to understand. And some of the skills are a lot easier than some of the other ones to understand. Like, you can have a bad day and you can recover and do something great at the end of the day. That's really what we're trying to teach these little guys. But it's a mindset. There's training for the paraprofessionals. So a lot of these kids have paraprofessionals with them in the classroom for safety and to embed those skills in throughout the day. So maybe they're in the class and they're, mid-knowledge block and they're like, I've had it, I can't, I'm tapping out. Right. Paraprofessional is there using that same language, using the strategies. So there's like a constant flow of those skills being given to these kids all day long. They can't escape it. So, because everyone's trained in it. They're special ed teachers, they're regular ed teachers, they're paraprofessionals, so that language is used all day.
Yeah, and so you all use the same language.
We do, yeah.
That's great.
And we try, we did a lot of work with Middlebrook. Obviously, Tanya Leonard is so deeply rooted in this. She came down, she spoke with us several times. Melissa pulled the whole district sort of DBT, mental health continuum together at one point so that we could talk about it from that age all the way up to the high school, and just what's different. And we're going to get back together over the summer and create like a flowchart document kind of thing for it. And then with all of this training and with the success, we're going to build on that. We do have other students slated to also receive this type of service moving into next year. We had an immediate need to bring down some high-risk, very dangerous behaviors, and now that we've done that, we are planning on really opening it up to more.
It's been a very effective methodology.
It really has. It's been incredibly impactful.
Very.
And it's a tiered approach too. So, Sharon's examples were really critical of a small cohort of students. And then when we look at expanding that model, if we look at our secondary model, we have students at secondary who require it daily, and we have groups that run once a week.
Yeah.
Right. So this can really hit a wide range of students based on the level of intervention they need.
Yeah.
And students can take it, identified or not, at the high school as a credit through wellness seminar.
And all that includes parent training also.
So that's what I was going to ask. Yes, at Middlebrook, there's a parent training module, and I didn't know if there was a similar availability, because, yes, they get it all day, but the school day is 6.5.
Generalize
Yeah, no, it's been great. I mean, as you could imagine, we meet with these families quite often, and we are sharing a lot of it. But Maria Streeman, who's the one running all of this down there, I say running it, but she's leading it along with a nice team. She has set up biweekly, the same thing that Tanya does up at the Middlebrook, where you can sign up for a slot,
Right.
and then the parent can sign up, go on, and then she will talk to them about the skill they're learning that week, how their particular, like, individual, because we're so small at Miller Driscoll, she's able to do it on an individual basis, so she's telling these families how their student is doing with it all. I know at the secondary, I think sometimes it's a small group of parents, and so you're not talking more specifically about the child, but more about the skills.
Well, and we've scaled it up already, and you guys are on your way. Right. So, and we have it included in some of Jory's weekly letters, and also just like newsletters going home, so that parents start using the vocabulary across. Someone said the word "but" today.
Yes.
And I was like, I haven't heard that word in a long time.
We got one of my favorite emails was from a parent saying, it was a middle school parent who got, into a middle school moment with their child, and he's like, "Mom, stop, we need to DBT this." And it was used as a verb, and that's when you're like, yes, we've done it. So that's really the end goal, is to expand that language.
Yeah. It's been a real game changer
It's been a huge game changer, and I do want to just give a shout out to Kathy, because this is, I mean, obviously Melissa, you have to have somebody that's willing to go along this with you, and obviously Melissa's that person. And Kathy, I mean, to just stop midstream, we had to reassign staff, we had to reassign, case management. We had to have a lot of sometimes uncomfortable conversations with families. And we had to change a whole lot around. We had to move rooms. We did a whole bunch of things. I think I just want to say thank you, because none of that, you won't be able to do any of that unless you have a principal that's working right alongside your assistant superintendent of special ed and your staff. So it's been a huge team effort.
Pretty great, though.
Yeah, definitely.
You said at Miller Driscoll there was about, right now there's 4 students, but over there maybe there was 5 or 6. And what's the number of students in the similar program at Cider Mill?
So Cider Mill, currently we have 2 of our school psychologists running these DBT groups. I want to say each of them have right now between 5 and 10. Some it fluctuates because some have come in and out. So it's fluid up there for sure. But there's probably, I would say, 20 students maybe total that attend either 5 days or 3 days a week of this. Both of those school psychologists have also, along with this training, started what they're calling a soft start, and they have kids coming in first thing off the bus and going to their room to do sensory activities, a homework that they couldn't get the night before that they were stressing about, whatever it is. Those same students are afforded that opportunity to come in and start their day there and start on at a good pace and then get into the classroom for morning meeting. So that's also been really good.
And those groups are across age cohort, correct?
Yeah, yes. So again, everything's going to be a little bit more structured next year, but for this year, on both sides, the north and south side of the building, we have a 5th grade. We have our biggest group, our 5th grade over there, but she does also have a 3-4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about achievement gaps? Sorry, arrears.
Sorry.
So the numbers look good, they look like they're moving in the right direction. What practices do you think are contributing the most to the improvements?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think, we're going to use our DBT skills. We're moving in the right direction, and we still have a lot of work to do. So I think when we look at what's contributing to it and our goal setting, I think a large portion, and Nicole shared a little bit around it, is really our integration with our coaches. So they have really helped us to unpack the data and see some trend lines. We have also really spent a lot of time within our IETs with our special education staff looking at our students approaching benchmark. So those are students who kind of live in the yellow when you get that pretty color chart sent home. Really spending some time looking at those students and really honing in on what skills, so not just looking at their scores, but looking at the skills within those scores that they were struggling with. And providing the right intervention and support while maintaining their time in the classroom. So if you only look at, trying to close that gap by pulling them out in retention services, you just fall further behind. So that balance that you saw in our first goal around balanced classrooms is really critical. So that, I think, is another contributing factor. So really looking at the skills that we're lacking, their time within the classroom, how we balance that with intervention. And when you think about that, there's a lot of people vying for time in that equation. So that's where we've spent a lot of time talking about some of the artificial barriers really that we put up, if you have an IEP, you see a special ed teacher. If you're starting to show some lagging skills, you might see an interventionist. But that interventionist might have a group of kids that a student receiving special education is having the same issue with, And we're all trying to get the same amount of time. So that's where, to answer the second part of your question, looking into next year, we've talked about the integrated support. So trying to put down some of those artificial barriers and sharing students, regardless of where their identification might be, with our support staff. Yeah, of course.
Yes, just the achievement gap.
Yep.
So we're always talking about closing the achievement gap. What does a realistic expectation around that look like? Is that something that is a constant moving target? Is there, because or is it something that's never attainable, but we get, I just.
It's attainable.
Okay, so like, I
would
just wanna,
say
Is it a
can do it.
perpetual
Yeah.
goal?
it is. I don't, if we close the gap all the way, we have no special education. So I like my job, but the gap also can look like different things. Like Melissa was saying before, we have really high performing kids who don't look like that on testing because they're not emotionally able to take a test or available for learning at that point, right? So data can look very different day to day, as we know, right? So I think that to answer your question, there isn't one plan because every kid is different and we need to meet them where they are. They might need this. We have kids who, who bomb tests and then they go through the roof because they're emotionally able to perform and access their knowledge, right? And then some of the most significant data that when we were looking at the different bands on the map were the kids in the red, that we call it, the kids who really are really not nowhere near benchmark, made the most gains in our plans this year for targeted instruction, where we thought that was going to be most of the kids
we were worried that.
closer to the cusp. So that's interesting data that I went through with the coaches this week, and we're like, that's so interesting that was the most effective for them when we thought it would be most effective. So it's really just like reviewing and understanding, and most importantly, and in all our conversations that I've had with both departments, interventionists and special education, when you're talking about numbers and systems, fine, but when you really talk about the kids and who they are, that's when people get invested and you start storytelling and like, oh, that worked for them, and this is what, how I got them, engaged and motivated, and yes, this kid can do it because we're going to show them how we're going to do it. And so really when you identify who the kids are, that's when they're going to make the progress because they become a part of it too.
So I think that part of my point to that is hearing some of the work behind those numbers is important for us to hear and for everybody to hear too, because that actual, that kind of one benchmark number doesn't necessarily tell the full story or doesn't really kind of reflect the complete success of the program or how, kids are doing within it.
Okay.
So I think that like hearing just more about what's underneath that.
It's a good point. I think that's something we've talked a lot about for next year. As we integrate supports, you're adding a larger team. So we're also been talking about what data points we're going to look out in between standardized assessments to answer some of those questions,
Like
right?
really, is there other measures of success that we can kind of pivot around and
add to part of this, right?
Yeah, when we went through the budget process, you talked that you were going to measure not just, and you mentioned earlier tonight, but I just didn't see it in here, less of the gap relative to some general population and more about progress against, perceived ability of this student to make progress.
Yeah.
You have that somewhere?
Yeah, I can share that with you. So we have the conditional growth percentiles by grade of our students with disabilities and without disabilities. So I can share that with you. That's really some of our work this summer is we're really looking at data structures in between these standardized assessments, and the area to really focus on that is going to be that growth percentile because that is measuring them against themselves. And for a student, like Nicole was mentioning, that's in the red and is significantly below benchmark, that's a student that we're going to want to see growing way past 50% in a year's time, right? So really setting some targets based on where their baseline is. But I can share that data with you. I do have it.
And then the other thing that just, I guess at some point would love if there's time to go deeper. It's like I see some of the variation, and it's not clear to me whether these movements are sort of statistically significant or whether we're sort of just seeing normal variation or population changes, people leaving the district, new people coming in, and how much of those factors are like I guess I'm kind of hungry for a little bit of a decomposition of not just how much did the number move, but what were the various levers that were causing that movement.
Yeah. We have some more disaggregated data I could share. I think, so I could share that with you and happy to unpack it more. I think in terms of population data, we have not had a decrease in our students with disabilities. If anything, we've had an increase in more of our students with. So if you look at that demographic disability category, you can see we've had an increase in our students with autism and OHI. So we've had some more variability in the students we're seeing, which I do think plays into it. But I can share some of that data with you.
On that note, actually, if you have it as a follow-up, I would love to see some of the trend data. I'm curious to know, the population of pre-K is pretty large, like it's larger than any other class grade up till 5th grade, I think, maybe even higher. And so I don't know if we factor that into like needs in the elementary school in the next 3 to 4 years and whether we budgeted properly for the number of students. But I think it'd be important for us to know whether we think that's a statistical outlier of a class of pre-K students, or is that the number of students we should expect to come in with disabilities into the district?
Yeah, so that number has increased over the last few years for sure. I also think just being mindful for all those listening and watching, our students with disabilities in that pre-K 3 and 4 that are referred from birth to 3, there's not many preschools that give them support and services, so them coming here, that number sometimes looks higher than what we might see in kindergarten. But that has been a number that has been increasing and is something that Bernadette has paid a lot of attention to, and I think you might hear us next year talk a little bit more about what we want to do before pre-K. So I'm glad you asked.
And then I was just also just a little bit curious, you had the, for each school, you kind of had the numbers of referrals and then found eligible, found eligible and then pending.
Yep.
So are you finding that the referral kind of number over years is holding steady? And is there like a split between, is it like 50-50 school parents, like what's the difference?
So we've seen, if you look at our referral data by building over the last 5 years, so the place where we've seen a really steady decrease is the high school, which we invested a lot of time in that over the last 4 years, because that's a space where if a student is being identified, you worry, right? We do have students with some complex social emotional situations that arise at high school, and that requires some significant intervention. That number has really decreased over time. Our Middlebrook number this year has decreased since we started our MTSS process, so that's really trying to put interventions in place before they start. We've stayed pretty consistently at Cider Mill. Miller Driscoll is the highest it's been in a while this year, but I don't necessarily equate that to being a bad thing. If I'm going to look at a time when a student is requiring intervention or needing support, I'd want to see those referrals in K2. That's not a bad space to see them, but that we've been a little higher there than we have in the past.
Any other questions for Melissa?
Well, the trick is, they come into kindergarten unidentified. And then there's that whole process of trying to find how you can help them. So that number is always gonna be fluid, and that's probably always gonna be heightened just by the nature of the world now and where kids are.
Yeah, I think we're definitely seeing a more diverse range of referrals at a younger age than we were seeing before. I think to your question around parent and school referrals, it's pretty evenly split. We've spent a lot of time looking at that data. And I also think, there's a number behind the referrals, and it's also, that's a journey for a student and a family. And we want to have the right data before we make a referral to talk about a child having a disability. And it's also, the emotional journey that you coach a parent through when they are going through that. There's a grief behind that for a lot of families. There's fear. And I think, that's some of the work I'm most proud of with our teams is the emotional support that they give to families and students. That PBT process is really challenging. Even when everyone around that table is in it and feeling good about it as a parent, it's a very emotional experience. And I think the work our teams do to support parents through that, to make sure students are progressing and to also have them understand is a big part. So when we see it younger, that's more time for us to help them in the journey.
And you'll be more successful as they go through the system because they'll trust it.
Just listening to the questions around the table, I think one thing we can do is plan a data workshop for the fall.
That'd be fun.
It'll be fun. We'll have current end of year data.
I think that's.
And you have a little bit of proof of concept just with some of the.
And we can share some of our summer work and what our new positions are doing.
I think the work that you guys are just starting to really do with that, like the flexible grouping and the sharing of supports, seems so promising. And so to be able to, hear more about that and see how it works, and I think also how some of like the effects of the DBT programs in the little schools, and just understanding some of the achievement gap questions and the data behind that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, so like a general sense, just based on the questions I've heard tonight, but if there are additional questions as you're thinking about it, or kind of interrogating what you've seen or heard so far, send them along, and then we'll plan for September.
We can do it together, Chuck.
But it's really, to hear some of where we were in the beginning of the year and some of the concerns, and hear kind of the progress that's been made in this year, it's been really tremendous. So thank you all for
Thanks for all your work, really.
the hard work and some of the difficult
Great work.
conversations and the trying things and figuring things out.
Thank you for your support.
Okay, Wilton Public Schools Ed Specs. Or
Right,
education.
in service to helping you sleep at night, I provided everyone draft copies of educational specifications developed by Eric Fire and KG&D for Miller Driscoll, Cider Mill, and Middlebrook schools. The high school educational specifications documents still under construction. So what these documents are the school districts' detailed accounting of what we believe we need in our educational spaces to provide quality education. And so the way it's organized, as you'll see when you go through it, each of the documents, part one are looking at educational activities, and so it lays out in kind of fine detail, grade level overview, the number of classrooms, the types of classrooms, and then some of the qualitative characteristics that we want inside all of those spaces. You will see thematically as you read across them interest in opening spaces up, in accessing outdoor spaces, and creating more flexible spaces, in trying to be better prepared to respond to whatever's coming in the future in terms of educational shifts. So there's real focus on flexibility in the way that our interests are described, in addition to some much more practical things like making sure we have enough power outlets in the right places so kids can charge their devices and things like that. So there's nothing you need to do with these tonight. I'm not going to ask the board to do anything until the fall. The other necessity we have is we're gearing to do longer duration projects. The state requires educational specification documents as part of the eligibility process for reimbursement. And so what I would ask is, again, if you're having trouble dozing off, start on page 1, and then you've got to read right, and just start to familiarize yourself with that context. They will read, very similarly in style across the schools, and then if as you're kind of working your way through them, if questions emerge or there's something you want to come back around to, we'll do that. In terms of next steps, we'll have Eric back working with the high school staff to finish off the development of the high school educational specifications, and then I'll have him come back to one of our early board meetings and just provide a brief presentation to kind of talk you through from his perspective as he was putting these together in partnership with our staff, and then we can entertain questions and go from there.
One thing that would be helpful again is we eventually get to that point when he does come to present, or as we're reading this, definitely understand why we want to follow ed specs to make ourselves reimbursement eligible. It'd be interesting to understand where we find ed specs, if at all, to be in conflict with what we would otherwise want to design, and just understanding what the trade-offs are that we'd be making to say, okay, we're designing it this way to comply, but if we had our druthers, we would actually want to do it this way. And there's a trade-off decision to say, do we follow the ed specs to be compliant for reimbursement purposes, or do we go with what we think is in the best interest of the school and the students? So I have no idea whether those trade-offs exist, but if they could give that lens, I think it'd be really
Yeah,
interesting.
that's a really interesting question.
Sorry, just maybe my.
Do you want me to read it? Say it again?
Well, no. I
Oh.
guess what I'm trying to figure out is like, to what extent is the ed spec like a documentation requirement versus a what the mission and what you're allowed to do requirement? And I don't know.
Yeah, I would say,
Because if it's purely like
it's
how you write it
both.
up.
Yeah,
We can
same,
write whatever we
right,
want.
true,
And can
yeah.
you make it however you want it, and then that becomes the spec, and you can just follow that?
Yeah, I think so. I would, I think we'll come back to that question. That's a wonderful question to dig into. I think, what you'll find in sections of the document, there are certainly philosophical and aspirational elements that describe, kind of our approach to education. You'll also see, a very practical accounting of the number of rooms we have and we think we need, and in part, that's based on what's currently existing. And so, to your question, you immediately took me to building a new school. Would these be the documents? And maybe they would be. Right, we still need X number of classrooms, X number of offices, X number of whatever. But I'm going to chew on that one myself.
Yeah, I guess it's like, I don't even know, is it a self-attestation that we followed it, or somebody review it and say, yes, you've met the core requirements of ed spec?
No, this is, I don't want to overstate this, but, my general understanding is, when you're pursuing reimbursement at the state level, I don't know that any actor at the state really cares about the content and what's in here versus did what you actually designed and built match what you said, and like that's where the eligibility is determined. And so in terms of beginning from the beginning, we can design, what we want and what we think we need, and in part I think that's, what you'll see here.
Yeah.
Could be the development process. I don't know.
Yeah, I would just, it would be
Yeah,
interesting to know, like, if we ever felt constrained.
I didn't hear the
Like I said, it could just be a development process, like, and if it's just I think it comes back to the thing we were talking about before, like, if the process is mandated, then, well, we can follow the process.
Right.
If the content is mandated, then that's a different story.
Yeah, fair, understood.
So, in the winter you get your budget book, and in the summer you get your ed specs.
It's not being annual.
Well, may, fulfilling what's in this book become something that we look at annually and move towards. Next up, we have first reads of several policies. So we'll start with policy 4132, professional publications and presentation by staff.
So you have these policies when last we met. They're on to review and discuss. They'll be on for discuss and approve in the next round. But just to refresh your memories, in this review, we struck some of the language and revised it for readability. The other add that was not present in the previously existing policy is the last sentence about the district's right to a legal claim on products created by employees that are working for us, with the use of school system funds.
Do we have many staff that do this?
Off the top of my head, I can't think of it. It's more common to see staff, engage in studies for, their dissertations or master's theses or things like that. But I'm not
think of
aware
one
it.
simply.
What are you talking about? Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's, so the answer is no.
Any other questions about policy 4132? So that'll next meeting, it'll be on for action. If anybody has any questions between now and then, they should feel free to send them in to Kevin. Next up is policy 5144.4, physical activity and student discipline.
All right, so here there is an addition of a line: school employees may prevent or restrict recess when a student poses a danger to the health or safety of themselves and the students or school personnel. Margaret and I had a very rich conversation about CABE proposed language and what it all meant, and then distilled it to a single sentence.
So basically, the philosophy is we don't use recess as discipline. Yes. And there may be a time or a case to prevent, or that we do need to use it, and it's not as a discipline, but it's for the health and safety of the child or other children. Any questions or comments about 5144.4? Again, that'll be for action at the next meeting, and in between now and then, if you guys have any questions, please reach out to Kevin.
Probably the only thing I was highlighting on this one is there was a law passed, and this is a response to that law as well.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
yes, I should have said that, that's right. So we
Oh, yes, so
that's
there's the
also
new
noted.
referral, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Next up is policy and regulation 5118, attendance of non-resident students.
So I'm going to request a change in this policy from the board. So this has been a long-standing policy, and it speaks to, so the policy, this is actually the regulation, the policy language enables the district to allow non-resident students to attend. The regulation colors in those details. The provision I'm interested in modifying is in reference to children of employees. And so up until 2017, employees' children could attend our school, space permitting, and there was no charge. In 2017, the board at that time changed and introduced a 30% of the tuition charge, to that given per pupil expense of that year for any children of staff members hired after 2017. This is one I've been thinking about for a while, and as we have been watching the complexion of the talent pool change and the competition for highly qualified teachers grow across the region. This is a policy that could, with the deletion of that provision, could serve to help make us a little bit more marketable for some of the best staff out there. And so that's my recommendation tonight, is that we strike that language around
The tuition?
the tuition charge, yeah, the 30%.
So it'd be free?
It would revert back to the practice that all of the employees hired prior to 2017. And
That's a good idea.
yeah, and so, I went back, and when I was thinking about this, and I looked at just the distribution of children of staff that we have here, and the vast majority are actually of staff that were hired prior to 2017. And so, it seems to me that this probably has been I can't prove a negative that we somehow missed, some of the best because they were going to have to pay if they wanted to have their kids come here. But I think as a marketing opportunity,
it's a good draw.
It's self-evident. Yeah, and I asked Maria just to be prepared, to talk a little bit about the prospective employee piece.
Sure. I think this is a timely conversation because hiring season is in full swing, and the landscape in hiring has changed over the past 5 years. In real estate, it's still a seller's market. In hiring in the field of education, it is very much a buyer's market. And we are seeing more now than ever before candidates that are looking for the total package, candidates that are looking for opportunities that are closer to home. So they're less willing to travel for work because they're thinking about the work-life balance. They're looking at the fringe benefits that we offer, the tuition reimbursement. There are questions about allowing their children to come here for the education. And I would see this as a strategic move to strengthen our recruitment and retention strategy, because
staff who bring their children here are more likely to stay for the long term than staff who don't. And I think this is something that would really set us apart from other area districts. This does exist in area districts. I will say the trend in area districts typically is to charge some portion of tuition. And so again, it's thinking about what sets Wilton apart as a desirable place to work and to stay for the long term. And so I would really, I would support this. And I will also say anecdotally, we do have questions from staff members annually about the prospects for bringing their children here. And those staff members who were hired after 2017 it gives them some pause to think about spending even 30% of the tuition cost to bring their children here. So that is a factor that I think prevents some people from bringing their children here where otherwise it wouldn't be. So I would very much support it.
Any questions for Kevin or Maria? Any come up within the next 2 weeks, feel free to pass them along.
Next up, under possible action items to discuss and approve. Once again, we had the Wilton PS 26-27 revised district calendar.
So, nothing major here. After 2 years of having to cancel professional learning for teachers in February, we're just going to give up the ghost. And so we moved the day. Initially, we were thinking in September in partnership with the WA and having some dialogue with them. They really asked to try to have they acknowledge just how disruptive the fall can be. And so what we're proposing in this calendar change is to move that professional learning day to November 2nd. That's the Monday before Election Day. And we are intentionally trying to front load the day and not put it in the back part of the calendar because we have the reading curriculum still. We just have a lot of demand for professional learning support for some of the new curriculum.
So that they would have Monday and Tuesday off.
The Monday is an early release. Tuesday is already
Tuesdays are because of the
professional
voting.
learning day
Yeah.
because it's Election Day.
So I think that just needs to get noted on that box next to November. It says the 3rd is.
Oh, yeah, so just
Professional.
the note about the 2nd being the.
Professionals, yeah, professionals.
Yeah,
Third is
election
off
day.
for election day.
Yep.
But then you said this was in September?
No, November 2nd.
No, but it was
Originally, the day
We-
was
so, well,
in September.
Still have one
So,
in September.
On the original calendar that we adopted a year ago, this day was actually in February. And so we've kept that initial day in September. So when we were looking to locate the day from February, some of the initial thinking was to put it on the 30th.
Oh, I see.
Through the consultation with our staff, they request we not do that.
So we'll just strike from September what the 30th is, take that off the list on the side.
Yeah, so that was huge. Yeah.
Oh, September, right, there,
Yeah, so that's the conversation just got.
yeah. The notation moves down to the 2nd.
Right.
Have we ever? I don't recall talking about it, but we absolutely could have. Are there programming and like continuing ed programs that can run on those days specifically to help that don't require staff who need to be in the professional development work to just help with childcare for families?
I think continuing ed runs a program, and
It does. I don't know if it goes all the way, it does it at Miller Driscoll, I think,
yeah.
and Cider Mill.
It does for after-school
We've
care, but
talked
not
about-
beyond that small group.
Yeah,
We
so
do
for
such
the
a good
people
job
that
of
are
like putting
already
these dates out
pre-registered.
there, and then like they come, and then all the parents are
All the
always like
parents are
texting, "I can't believe we have another." It's like they're very warranted, and we do all the explanation. But part of that's on parents to just try to plan ahead. But like I just wonder if there's with whatever 1,000 kids plus, or a couple of thousand kids.
Yeah, so that, I mean, it'd be, fee-for-service kind of program.
Yeah.
And, I think we'd have to talk to the continuing ed folks to see if they could staff up a drop-in, for kids who are other than already in their program, because those are not kids that
Yeah.
we're able to serve.
I know it'd take a lot of coordination, but.
I know we've had conversations with Dolores in the past, and,
Staffing is an issue.
Right, 'cause you're basically hiring additional staff for a day, so. Absolutely, we'll go back and bite the apple again.
Is there a motion to approve the Wilton Public Schools 26-27 calendar as drafted on 5 changes? The half day from September 30th to November 2nd.
So moved.
Thank you, Pam. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Lori. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next up is policy 6163.1 and 1312.3, selection of school library materials. This is on for its second read.
Right, and then
The appendices are attached as
I
well.
neglected to include the appendix A in the version you saw 2 weeks ago, so that's there. And noted appendix B, and there was also a little clean up in some of the language, with capitalizations and things like that, but it's ready to go at this point.
And just a further note that this is a response to change in legislative requirements. Are there any questions or discussion on selection of school library materials? Is there a motion to approve policy 6163.1 and 1312.3, selection of school library materials? Thank you, Nicola. Is there a second?
Fine, I'll second.
Thank you, Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. And lastly, we have a recommendation to retire policy 3541.32, transportation for co-curricular activities.
So this policy came up as part of the review with the policy committee of policies that just haven't been touched in a while. This policy is unique to Wilton. I went back to Shipman and Goodwin. They don't have a model. I went to the CABE policy manual. They don't have a similar policy. So I asked our attorney to review it and make a recommendation. And in addition to the policy being just clunky and dated, she also noted that we really don't need it. Our transportation obligations are covered in our comprehensive transportation policy. So the recommendation is to retire it.
Any questions or comments on retiring the policy?
Yeah, good run.
You've now been absorbed into the comprehensive transportation policy. Is there a motion to retire? Thank you, Pat. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mark. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Comments from the public? No comments from the public. Future business, I want to remind Wilton residents, if you haven't voted, go out and vote. Food Center, Saturday, budget and bonding. We have an anticipated executive session again on May 21st prior to our regular meeting on the 21st, and then there will be a regular meeting on June 4th. Hope everybody enjoys the warmer weather, all the choral and band and sports activities, end of year activities. Meeting adjourned at 8:14.